Hoxie with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay with Tacitus today, I'd like to look at, or break down rather, the various best paid or highest paid and lowest paid job categories, then look at the race and gender breakdown across those categories. So here's some interesting sort of stats here for the top 10 best paid occupations, and we're talking like a first world Western country here, and there's a little bit of variance country to country, but not a whole lot. So this is using the United States as really the benchmark, but again, the variance between, say, the United States and Australia or Canada isn't really that much. Now, the best paid occupations are 82% men and 18% women, and the overwhelming majority of those men are white. Now, again, the United States is a white country. If you went to China and looked at where are the best paid people, they'd be Chinese. If you went to Japan, they'd be Japanese. If you went to the Republic of Congo in Africa, they'd be black, and so on. So that's hardly surprising. You know, the social justice activists go, the oppression of white people, racism. That's absurd because it's a majority white country. Now, 18% of the best paid category are women, and it's quite clear that they're the vast majority of them are affirmative action wave-throughs and appointees. So there's very few women making it, some, but very few making it on merit. So I don't know whether they've expanded that best paid job category to fit women in and just increased the amount of jobs there, or whether or not these affirmative action women have actually taken jobs away from capable men. That's a bit harder to determine. On the face of it, it looks like they've just expanded the amount of those jobs and then given some to women, which suggests that the women have been given good big titles, director of diversity and nice offices and big salaries, but they don't actually do. They're not responsible for anything. They've got no accountability. So I'd suspect that's more the situation with women's employment there. Now, in the bottom, this is interesting. In the bottom five, the lowest paid five categories of employment, that's things like dishwashers and burger flippers, that sort of stuff. The overwhelming majority of them are men. They're just 76, 77% of men. This is in the lowest paid category. Now, in the out of the bottom 10 lowest paid categories, the lowest five of those have a majority of men employed there. Again, dishwashers, that sort of stuff. And in the other lower paid jobs, things like kindergarten carers and that sort of thing, or nursing assistants and so on, then women by far and away make up the majority of those jobs, and no one's forcing them to take those jobs, so it's a matter of choice. Now, they know going into the jobs that they're lower paid. They also know that it requires very few qualifications. You can easily get in. I've known women who are there's one woman who is retarded and IQ of 80 and this sort of thing, and she managed to get a job in kindergarten. Goodness knows how, but anyway, so there you go. Now 73% of the people in the lower paid categories are non-white. So it's only when you get to say something like nursing where the majority are white, but that's changing very rapidly at the moment, given that wages are so stagnant in those areas. People, if they have got a choice of finding other employment. I just wanted to take a look at household income here. Now, with the avalanche of people from other very, very different cultures being brought to the West against the the wishes of the local populations being forced on the Western white populations by their globalist controlled governments. We also need to look at the sources of the mass migration, where there are surplus populations in the world. When I say surplus, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of millions, collectively billions of people who are surplus, who are living a subsistence, hand-to-mouth existence, in some rural subsistence farm, and they're being brought to the West. A lot of those people being brought into the West, and because they don't exist in the world economy. When you're a subsistence farmer living on barter, you don't exist. You're not a number. You're not a figure. You're not a statistic. You're nothing. You just don't exist. Whereas when they bring these peasants to the West, suddenly they become an economic unit. Even if they push a broom for one day a week, they have become an economic unit. They've become a worker consumer, and now they do figure in the world economy. Whereas on the African subsistence, little farm out in the middle of nowhere, they don't exist. So, and this is part of the driving force of moving these people to the West. The globalists cannot make these people statistically appear in the African economy, no matter how much money they throw. They're just too corrupt, and they're just too much of a basket case. But they can make these people a statistic or a number when they move into the West. Now, so on household income, though, there's some interesting statistics. It's listed here that Indians, people from the subcontinent, make 60% of what an Anglo-Saxon worker, white worker, this is averages. So they're paid in low-paid employment now. Again, that's changing rapidly. The amount of Indian doctors and radiologists and so on that I'm coming across day to day, be they given affirmative action roles or not, then I would think that statistic would change. You can go into medical centres now in Australia and elsewhere. There's not a single white doctor, or not a single doctor that speaks English as a first language, for goodness sakes. And that's clearly absurd. In a white country with people clamouring to get into medicine, you can't find any white doctors to speak English. And that's absolutely ridiculous. It goes to show you the extent to which our governments fuck with us. The Indians say that there's 60, or these stats say that 60%, the Indians make 60% of what a white worker does. No, I don't dispute that. I mean, so, okay, fine, let's run with that. But then when you switch to household income, then suddenly the Indians are doing better on a per capita basis. And, Indians are making, in household income terms, they're making about 15, depending on whose numbers you look at, between 15 and 20% more income per household. So you go, well, gee, how can that be so if they're getting 60%? Well, the issue is in these these societies where they've got a long tradition where multiple generations live together under the same roof, which may not be that easy, but where multiple generations live under the same roof, where you might have 3, 4, 5 different families, all with their wives and husbands and children and cousins and aunts and uncles, that sort of thing. So the immigration policies of the West are allowing the Indians, or people that come from that multi-generational households, allowing these people to bring out these multiple generations. Only one person gets to Australia as the migrant, but then because of the family reunion, chain migration thing, they're able to bring over, aunts, uncles, cousins, fifth cousins, mums, dads, the whole fucking village is brought over, and so you can have quite a large, so they're, say in a 5-bedroom house, you could have 5 different families living in that house. Maybe they've got a couple of kitchens and 3 bathrooms, and and so on, and they're all and all of them are working. The grandparents maybe don't speak English, or they're looking after the grandchildren and the kids, while all the able-bodied adults are out working or studying. Because they're Indian, they're given affirmative action jobs in the government, and affirmative action jobs elsewhere. they're given affirmative action places in college and university and various training courses. So they're able to live, and they might have one car between them, two at most. They're able to pool their resources and share their resources, and so on a household basis, they're actually doing better than the Anglo household. Now, one of the things that's causing a huge relative reduction in standard of living for Anglos is in the Anglo-Saxon sphere. We've got a tradition, probably more modern than something that lasts back forever, but we've got a tradition of single family households. And I'm not talking about say kids, who are studying and 3 or 4 of them may share an apartment or something. I don't mean that, but the idea of when you get married, you've got to, that's the household. The husband, wife is the household, and they're having children, and those children live in that household, and you there is incumbent on you to take all that responsibility for making the household successful and having as big an income as you can, and that sort of stuff. So this is a a situation that is the cost of living is increasing at a much faster rate than wages. Those people from areas of the world that are prepared to live communally, and in fact that's all they know. They don't know anything else. That live communally, and where they've got the access to the chain migration and sending offshore for brides and husbands and back to the village, where they've got that intact. Then they're able as a household to be far more successful than the white households. And this is going to have a major impact over time. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback, Sharon. Thank you for listening.